Welcome to the voice of Bold Business Radio, the show about ways to stay competitive in a changing market, break through business plateaus, and respond to the changing expectations of today's customers. Your host, Jess Dewell, is a rapid growth entrepreneur, consultant, and business advocate with a 20-year track record of business excellence. She candidly discusses how to achieve your growth strategy and realize your company's unfulfilled potential. Now, here's Jess.
You're in the right place for conversations about current needs that we as business leaders face regarding technology, customer expectations, and changing markets. This program is about what it means to reach our short-term goals and increase confidence in our long-term positioning. Today's program, Program 189, is called Direct Your Career During Change. Because when we can take control of what we can, our actions, and we know what we need to be successful during change, whether it's imposed on us or by choice of ours, the success that we want in the role that we are in, what we do or don't do matters. And so what skills do we need to acquire the role that we want or to make the role that we have into more of what we want? Ted Prodromou is a social selling expert and the founder of Search Marketing Simplified. It's a full-service online marketing agency where Ted focuses on LinkedIn. And you may already know that Ted is America's leading LinkedIn coach. He's an award-winning, best-selling author of 2 books, Ultimate Guide to LinkedIn for Business and The Ultimate Guide to Twitter for Business. Ted, I'm really glad you're here today.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good to see you.
It is really good to see you too. I know typically the last time we saw each other was on a video call, and before that was an email, and then I actually got to see you in person too. You were in the greater Denver area, so that's always good.
Yeah.
We might as well shout out Gary. Thank you, Gary.
Gary Barnes, our buddy.
That's right. Gary Barnes, our buddy. And we'll both actually be at his event at the end of January. So if you have any questions about that, ping Ted or ping me. All right. Beyond that, we're going to come back to Ted because one of the things that I've been thinking about as we've been working on the shows over the last few months and as where we're going is that there's this forward-looking piece. This concept of the role that we're in is setting us up for where we want to go. And so what we're doing in our role, understanding the skills that are necessary in that role, and then realizing is where we want to go, where we think we want to go. I mean, those are all the kinds of questions that I have around this of, well, what do we need? How do we need to do it? And most importantly, what do we have control over? So Ted, is it as easy enough as saying, here's what we have control over?
Boy, wouldn't that be great?
I know, right?
I don't know if you know my background from years and years ago. I moved from Pennsylvania to California in 1980. I worked in Silicon Valley.
Yeah. I did know that.
Yeah, for 20 years. I had this incredible career as Silicon Valley was growing. And I remember saying to myself one day, like, you know, I am so blessed. For 20 years, I've had an incredible career, making great money, and I can go out and find a new job any day of the week and make more money, and I never have to worry about my career ever again. And I was like 40 at that time. And that's when the dot-com crash hit and blew up that whole career. And literally, I couldn't go back to it. So I had no control.
No control. So you think things are going well, and maybe they are, and then all of a sudden they're not. From something totally out of the realm of anybody's thinking. In that case, of the dot-com crash, right?
Right.
I remember I had a business then, and I remember what it was like. Wow. Yeah. And so when you realize there are things that are outside of your control, what did you grasp onto that you said, okay, so now what?
Well, it was actually, I was in a career transition anyway.
Yeah.
I love mentoring my employees. I had 75 employees when I worked at Cellular One. I just love mentoring them. I'd listen and help them. And I said, I want to be a coach someday. Because they used to bring in coaches to Cellular One and we were growing so fast. I said, I want to be a coach someday. So I got certified as a coach. And I'm thinking, well, maybe I'll quit my job in high tech and go be a coach. And that's when the dot-com crash hit. So, you know, like I say, burn that bridge behind you, you can't go back.
one, you can't go back, but two, that's like a really big, clear message. Right on, go coach already.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
What mindset did you need? You had already started taking some sort of action to a place you saw yourself being in some point in the future. And then you're faced with all of this change and this uncertainty. And then also now a lot of other unknowns, because going from a job to no job is an insanely different place to be, which can cause fear and anxiety. So what part of your mindset, looking back, was really a cornerstone for you to be able to take that next step forward toward coaching, towards marketing?
Well, what's interesting is I just thought, oh, it's just a little blip. Whenever I had a career change in the first 20 years, it's like, oh, yeah, just move on to the next job and things will be just as good or better. With switching to a coach, I never had to market or sell before. There's a whole different mindset. I was like, I work for big companies and I just went to work and they paid me money.
Yep.
So if I thought I would just transition into it, I didn't even think twice about it. And that's when reality set in, like, oh, I would talk to people, hey, want to hire me as a coach? I didn't know how to approach people. And they say, how much is it? I say, well, it's like $500 a month. Like, wow, that's a lot of money. I didn't know how to overcome objections. So slowly my confidence went down and I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm really glad you can laugh about it, because, I mean, were you able to laugh about it at the time?
Yeah, because my wife was working. So she helped out. She was only working part-time. She was a nurse at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it helped. We had some money coming in.
Yeah.
But our savings started to dwindle.
Mm-hmm.
And then this pressure after the first year of this, not knowing what I was doing, it started to get stressful.
Right. And it takes at least that long. And sometimes even now, a little longer, unless we're leveraging the right elements of how do I sell? How do I approach? What are the objections? So I actually have some concept of how to handle them. How do I listen for new ones? And what does that mean for my business, right? Those are the types of things that are coming to my mind that I understand. I'm thinking back now too, of what that was like. How did that go? And it makes me think, okay, so there are two things that I think fit here that we ought to just say. Even though you're a coach, you're talking about LinkedIn and you're talking about social selling and you're talking about Twitter, you're talking about all these things, technology. And so a coach is not somebody that we traditionally think of, or a coaching organization, an agency, whatever. We don't typically think of them as technology companies. How are people like coaches that are traditionally not a technology company actually a technology company today?
Right. Yeah, it's really changing so fast, more and more. So I got certified in 2000 and they never taught us about building the business, and there was like 2 places you could get a real certification at the time. So now it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much going on and there's so much easier to market yourself. But if you do a LinkedIn search for coach or personal coach or executive coach, there's millions, literally, people have coach in their profile.
Yeah.
So it's very competitive now, but with all this technology, we're just seeing all this content out there related to coaching and personal development.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I've got to totally take a sideward question now, and that is, so is there downward price pressure? What kind of pressures are you seeing with having such a market with so many players in it? How does that affect your business?
I'm kind of experiencing that right now. There's 1 million LinkedIn coaches out there now. I've been a LinkedIn coach for 7 years, and there was nothing like a LinkedIn coach back then.
Right.
So now everybody and their brother and sister is a social media expert and LinkedIn expert. But I've established myself by getting my content out there on a regular basis, and I created that America's Leading LinkedIn Coach.
Yeah.
My coach told me to call me that one day.
It's awesome.
I was in a mastermind. He said, they did a Google search. He goes, you're America's Leading LinkedIn Coach. I'm like, what?
I like it when other people see things about us that we don't see about ourselves in the role that we're in. That's, coach, mastermind, mentor. That's just a really important factor is somebody else can take everything that they're seeing, everything that we're saying, and synthesize it for us differently. And so that extra set of eyes is so important.
It took me about a year to actually start using it, though. Because I say, well, how do I justify that? I'm a really analytical guy. So, if somebody has, why are you America's leading LinkedIn coach? I said, well, because I've written 3 books. Because and my coach is like, it doesn't matter. Nobody's ever going to question it. And nobody ever has in 7 years.
Even though you have the statistics to back it up.
Now I do have statistics, but back then I didn't.
Okay. All right. So here's like the before and the after, or the cart and the horse question. Sometimes you have to say something to get it done. And sometimes you do something to be able to say something. Right. Now, which of those do you find most useful overall when you're making business decisions?
I think it depends on the situation. In this case, it was like, oh my God, I can't do that. Because I'm a really quiet guy, introvert. Like, I can't publicize myself like that. Make this bold claim.
Yeah.
People will make fun of me, or they might question it. And like, nobody ever did.
Isn't that okay? So we're coming back to mindset then, aren't we?
Mindset. Remember that a lot of these coaches, like, you're not a millionaire yet, just act as if you're a millionaire.
And you'll get there?
Dress like one, hang out with them, act as if. And eventually your subconscious kicks in and things happen. And that's really what happened.
So I'm reading this book, and I've got to go look up the quote while we're talking about this. Let me see if I can find it really quick. When your skills roughly match your challenges, you go into a flow state. And isn't that our goal in general, is to get to that place where work is fun, it's easy, and it's, and it seems effortless, and all kinds of things are happening.
Yep.
And so what you're talking about is that the fake it till you make it, if you will. And whether you believe in that or not, audience, here's the thing. There's something to be said for having that intention and taking those actions, because by default, you're closing the gap to get the skills that are necessary to get closer and closer to that flow state, to where things are easy, and the skills will change. And so I think that's something where belief is important. However, belief without action, right, doesn't get us anywhere.
You need the action, definitely.
Do you have a story of where you, you tripped up and you learned that?
Oh, I got about a million of them. No, we all fall down. And I remember that, or my boss said that to me at Cellular One time, because I was the IT guy.
Yeah.
And people always, they didn't even talk to you until they had a computer problem. Then they would just like pummel you and be mad at you and hate you. And like, he saw me just get attacked and knocked down, and he goes, boy, you just get up every time and just go on smiling to the next person.
Yeah.
And with the business failures, 2000, everything collapsed. I got another business going. 2008, that blew up because of the economy. I got a real job for 3.5 years. They made so much money, they got a venture capital investment, laid us all off. So like 3 times in 15 years, I've been knocked down totally. And I had to change careers each time.
Yeah.
That's the challenge now. Careers are coming and going in a couple of years instead of 40 years.
Wow. Okay. So I'm going to say that differently, because I know, for example, right, my grandpa and your grandpa had not only the same job, most likely their whole entire work career, it was the same industry. Now I'm thinking about where I'm at the tail end of this, and it sounds like you are at the other side of it as well, where we were in the same industry for long periods of time, sometimes our entire career, but we may have gone from company to company, but right. We were in the same industry. And now what I hear you saying, which by the way, I also see in the clients that I work with. And so Ted, I know that you see this too, and you're describing this from your experiences. It's actually not only switching positions or roles, it's actually switching industries, which may or may not use our same skill set.
Right. Totally different skill sets.
So how do you grapple with that? And how do we, I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking about this concept of social selling, and how do we then, because it sounds like to be marketable today, whatever our role is, whether we're out there on our own, we're leading a bunch of people, we're looking for a change, there's this element that we've got that must come into place of We have to have connections in a different way than we have ever had before.
Yeah.
Describe that for us. What does that look like?
Yeah. Well, yeah, social selling, I just kind of laugh at these little, it's like a marketing term.
Yeah.
Because it's just good old fashioned getting to know people. Like we got to know each other.
Uh-huh. Yeah, right.
We're not trying to sell each other or anything. We're just trying to build relationships. And then you may refer me to a friend and I may refer you to a friend.
Mm-hmm.
Social selling, the selling is what gets people. You know, you connect with someone on LinkedIn now, probably 8 out of 10 times they'll say, hey, thanks for connecting. I'm not trying to sell you anything, but, and they go on to this long sales pitch.
Which they're actually doing.
Right. It's like, you know, we just meet, says, hey, you want to marry me? No, I don't even know your name yet.
Right, exactly. You don't even know if I'm already married.
Right.
Right? Yeah.
That's kind of what it comes down to now. People are just being very aggressive.
When people think of sales, is it still, even though there's this concept of social selling and internet selling and digital selling and blah, 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 you're right. It all comes down to relationships. However, there's that element of getting noticed, getting fast, and being taught that numbers, get to the numbers and the results will come.
Make 100 cold calls, you might get one person to answer. Make another 100, you might get another person to answer.
So that's one way to do it, right? That just by the numbers, you know, you've got to get through the objections and figure them out and figure out how you've got to do things. At which point in time is there like a point where you're like, okay, so how do I do this with a little more ease? How do I do this with a little less stress? Because being told no that much, it's like against our human nature, right? It does erode us.
Yes. Well, we all know people love to buy things, but also people hate to be sold. You're going to buy a car, it's a terrifying experience because you know they're going to tag team you or go to a timeshare tour. Oh boy.
I know, right?
Because we own a timeshare and we've been on 1 million tours. And I said, I would love to work here for a year just to go through their training.
Right.
You could sell anything to anybody at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So they've got it down that they're trying to sell you, but people hate that.
Right.
So social selling, I just tell my people, like when you connect on LinkedIn, 99% of the people we're connected with will never meet. Right. But pretend we're sitting at Starbucks having a cup of coffee and having a conversation. Treat people like that, one-to-one instead of one-to-many, and they get to know, like, and trust you, and they buy from you. Mm-hmm. It takes time.
It does take time.
Don't have time anymore.
Well, you know, isn't that that's like the biggest business conundrum that I know. I work with companies and they face that every day, this concept of instant gratification, because that's what we're used to as a consumer. Yet, think about all the stuff that has to go into making instant gratification possible. So when a business does it or tries to do it, that's where there's failures and that's where there's upsets and that's where there's weaknesses and that's where, you know, there's false starts that sometimes are recoverable quickly, but a lot of times takes a while to recover from those. Right. And you're right, taking that time up front. How much time do you think it saves you? I mean, let's talk about efficiency for a minute. When you're talking about this, I'm thinking about this. I'm like, well, how efficient are you when you take the time up front to think?
Mm-hmm. Just think about social media. How much time do you spend on social media a day? Is that wasted time? How do you measure that? It's tough. Because
because I don't know if you saw maybe Scott wasn't on me and I'm kind of glad, but you saw the face I made. I'm like,
right. Yeah. But you know, when it's your birthday and on Facebook, you get like 500 people say happy birthday. You feel really good.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So I do that on LinkedIn too. I just say, hey, my assistant actually does it. I'll be honest.
Yeah. Way to go. That's transparency all around. Yep. Yeah.
A cut and paste message. Hey, happy birthday, first name.
Yeah.
Are you doing anything fun for your birthday?
Right.
20% of people will reply and tell you what they did on their birthday.
Isn't that amazing?
Starts a conversation.
Yeah. So it's about, really finding not necessarily the skills you need, the people that you want to know for the changes that you want to make and the changes that end up being a necessity to make, right? The ones that are things that are out of our control and then we're handed some circumstances,
right,
come from our ability to have a conversation. So why not start now? And so if you were to sum up, because you may have already said this in different ways, do you have like 3 ways the three underpins of an effective social salesperson, even if we're super introverted?
The first one is treat people that like they're human beings, not like a bot.
Mm-hmm.
Just because we're connected by electronics doesn't mean we're not humans at each end.
Right.
For some reason, we treat people differently.
Yeah.
It's like when I fixed computers, I would call up, they give me the service call literally on a piece of paper back in those days. And I would call the person up and I would say, hey, I'm Ted, I'm coming to fix your computer. They were just like screaming and yelling at me that the computer was down. And then when I showed up at the door to fix it, there's like, they were going to hug me. They were so happy to see me. But on the phone, they're like screaming and yelling at me. So treat people like you're face to face.
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And respect people.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, the internet, obviously we know what's going on with the internet these days.
Yeah. Right.
If you don't believe my political beliefs 100%, I'm going to just attack you mercilessly.
I was going to say, I don't know if the word troll exists anymore. Even back in the late 80s, the 90s, and I was, got in the high tech world in the late 90s. There were these things called trolls, and they would be there and they would cause trouble. And yeah, I was the center of a lot of trouble because people decided they didn't like me for whatever reason. And it's amazing how we forget, because if I can't, it's so funny. Where do I want to go with that? You're right about the respect piece. And so there's some personal awareness involved, right?
Yeah.
And what is your experience with personal awareness? And do you have any tips on wherever we happen to be right now? How do we get to that next level of personal awareness for not only for ourselves and how we're showing up, but to be able to better read and understand and use the technology to make those deep connections?
I use my gut a lot of times. You can tell by the tone of people's messages you're sending back and forth of what stage they're at.
Yeah.
The stages of relationships and the stages of buying and selling. I don't know. I use my gut feeling a lot, like, okay, this person's interested. Maybe I should see if they want to do a call to get to know each other or something.
That's also scary, because if you use your gut, you have to have personal responsibility now for your actions and your outcomes.
And that's woo-woo.
Right?
God forbid we'd use our intuition in business.
I know, which is funny, because isn't that what the best of us do, right? We do something enough. We have enough conversations. We start to pick up on things. We're in enough situations. We start to see things other people don't see. And that's based off of our own experience. And that's based off of the way that we do us in our world. That's the way that we show up to solve problems. That's the way we show up to serve. And so it's very interesting to consider that when we put this word sales or selling around it. It's like all of a sudden, everything that we know doesn't matter anymore. That experiential, all of our senses goes out the window for a checklist.
Yeah.
How can we give it up? How can we give up what we know and what we experience so easily? Do you have any idea?
No, that's fascinating about this. You just mentioned that word sale or selling, and just people just freak out. But think about, the dating is always that big example. You see someone, you want to go talk to them. At what point do you ask them out? At what point do you ask them to sleep with you? What time do you move in with me? And when to get married?
Yeah. Do you get a dog before or after you get married? Right? What?
There's no checklist that works for everybody. It's what your gut is telling you.
And how cool is it that we have those? It's great somebody put it together, right? I mean, honestly, every position description that has accountability built in has key things that are going to be measured. And then there's steps of how somebody did it to be able to figure out how to measure. So how did somebody do it to get to this result so that there is some sort of accountability? Right. Yet I hear what you're saying in terms of this concept of our own, and spin is not the right word, but it's our own pizzazz. It's who we are. And that's the authenticity piece. Are we willing to take responsibility for the role that we're in such a way that we can, that we're willing to put ourselves out there, that we're willing to say, yeah, I get that my role in this thing by having this conversation or many conversations will teach me how to read a situation so I can understand the objections as they're happening. So I can understand where somebody is and if they really don't need my help, and all we're going to do is talk about, dogs and coffee versus solutions and actual business relationships. It's kind of interesting that way.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And it all ties together. We're all human beings. That stuff's never going to change.
Never.
The
Now,
technology we communicate with will change.
which it has. Oh my gosh, talk about, I can only imagine the stories you can tell. I'm like, wow, can you imagine just from, holy cow. And I've never been in Silicon Valley to work. I worked in Kansas and Seattle in high-tech companies.
Did I tell you about my first LinkedIn death threat?
Tell us. Okay, I can't wait to hear this. Really?
Yeah, just happened about a month ago. So this guy reaches out to me, sends me an invitation to connect. Says, hey, it looks like we have a lot in common. Let's connect, see if we can do some business together.
Yeah.
So I accepted his invitation, and then I send a little welcome message, and we start conversing, chatting back and forth. And he was talking about SEO for Amazon. I'm like, oh, I never heard of that. Tell me more about that. I do SEO for websites and stuff.
Yeah.
Because I have a book coming out soon. So I thought, boy, if I can get my book to rank really well.
Yeah, exactly.
So then
use that relationship.
He goes, oh, looking at your profile, looks like you're over 50 years old. There's no way in hell you could ever know anything about SEO. I'm like, I've been doing SEO since the internet started. So he goes off on the stand like, there's no way you grew up with a wooden stick and a sword and you didn't have any technology in your life. I'm like, that doesn't mean I couldn't learn it. So then he tells me the scorpion and the frog story, and he says, I was put on this earth to take care of people like you. I'm going to extinguish you. This is all like a 5-minute LinkedIn conversation back and forth.
Really? The scorpion and the frog story came up?
Yes.
Oh my.
And he was put on this earth to extinguish me.
Okay, so
on social selling concept, I was ready to hire him to help do Amazon SEO for me at the beginning. And it turns out he wanted to kill me.
Oh, geez. I don't even know. I got so many things running through my brain.
So I immediately obviously disconnected. And he was the second person I ever disconnected from on LinkedIn. So of course I shared that with my email list and with my social networks immediately and got huge engagement.
Now you're sharing something funny, because what happens is other people will go, I didn't know that would be possible. Or, oh yeah, here's my story. No, they didn't use the word extinguish. They used a different one.
Right.
Oh,
I left his name out of it, but I got so much conversation going and so much support. It was unbelievable.
You are listening to Program 189, Direct Your Career During Change. We'll be right back after this.
You're listening to the voice of Bold Business Radio. In every program, we share stories, tips, and concepts that benefit short-term goals and increase confidence in long-term positioning. Stay current and receive programs to continue sparking ideas about growth strategy by subscribing to the program at voiceofboldbusiness.com. Now, back to Jess.
We're here talking with Ted Prodromou, who is social selling expert and, by the way, America's leading LinkedIn coach. The reason I bring this back up is because we've been talking a lot so far around different ways of social selling. So we're giving examples, by the way, through this conversation. Our conversation, this Voice of Bold Business Radio, probably feels a little different to you, and that's okay. And it's because it's shaped and sculpted specifically to imitate more like what you experience every day. I'm not going to sell Ted anything. He's not going to sell me anything, but we're building relationship. We know a lot of people who can help, we can help each other. That's not really what I want to say, but you get the gist. So we're going to leave it at that. And what we're trying to talk about is we're talking about change, right? Our career, what we can control. And we can all control who we know, how we know them, the relationships that we have through the conversations that are started. And so when we want to make a change, when we are given the opportunity to change without warning, we now have a more solid space to work from, a foundation with which to have confidence to keep turning and going, now, what can I do now? What do I want to do now? Who do I know that I can share this with that might be able to introduce me to the people that I need to go where I want to go now? And I think want is the key word. Wouldn't you say, Ted?
Yeah, definitely.
So if we're focused on, keep going.
No, I was just thinking about, you keep going back to that selling word. It just triggers so many negative things in my head.
But we're all salespeople, aren't we? We have to represent ourselves first and foremost. And I think most of us are afraid of that. I am. Yeah. I am the person who, and some of my clients can attest to this. I don't typically ask people for a sale. They have to tell me they want to pay me. They have to remind me to send them an invoice for that first one. The rest is not a problem, but it's that first one a lot of the time. And like you, I've been in business a long time. My company's 14 years old, that I've been leading this one all by myself, not on a team, not with a partner, none of that other stuff. And it's interesting to me how the fact I have to ask I have to close, I have to sell. And I'm like, well, guess what? I'm doing it every single day. Every single time I show up in a conversation, it doesn't matter if it's with the stranger in the car next to me at the red light who can't hear me, that I'm serenading on because I'm singing to the radio, or if it's the person that cut me off with their shopping cart when I'm tired and hangry right before dinner, right? Whatever the case may be, we're actually presenting ourselves that way. And we have goals. So how do we tie our goals to this concept of how we show up?
I just go back to the old school with Zig Ziglar, help as many people, just constantly help people. I grew up in a restaurant. My parents owned a restaurant. So it was like serving people. I've been serving people my whole life. So you just help people and they begin to know, like, and trust you. And then when you do ask for the sale, they're like, oh, sure. Why didn't you ask him before? I told him that the other day. He goes, God, you got to give so much value to everybody and you never ask for a sale. You never sell anything on your emails. I'm like, hey, people come to me. They find me because I build that relationship. I don't have to ask for the sale.
You give love notes too. I call them love notes. My newsletter's also love notes. There might be, hey, don't forget you might be interested in this thing, but we're not actively selling. It's very passive and very secondary to the purpose of sharing information that could be useful to somebody in that moment.
So you can sell without being the used car salesman by helping people.
Yeah. So how do you turn this into a sales funnel, right? So here we are, we're talking, and we're going to go back to this coach model, right? So maybe whether I'm insurance, real estate coach, whatever, paid by somebody in the middle or the top of an organization, doesn't matter. We have a role of sales, and that is to represent ourselves, to represent the mission of the company that we are a part of, whether it's ours or somebody else's. And what we do with that matters. And so perception is everything, isn't it?
Oh, totally. That's America's leading LinkedIn coach.
Yeah, exactly. Uh-huh.
It's all perception. My kids are like, who is this guy? And my daughter's wedding this year, one of the cousins came up to my son and goes, your dad's really famous. Did you know that?
Uh-huh.
We're all kind of looking like, oh, really?
I love it. It's so cool.
But in the social media world, I am.
Yeah.
I've established myself as one of the top people.
Yes. And now how long did it take?
It was faster than I thought. You don't really measure it and know, but
right.
It's the fact that I claimed that title 7 years ago. And now I can pretty much put anything out there and people will go, oh yeah, they believe me. They trust everything I say because they know that I don't make up stuff and I don't try to scam them when I'm selling stuff. Like a lot of people bait and switch you.
Yeah. You'd think we would have learned by now, going back to that accountability and responsibility and personal awareness. That's all I
know. No, there's still a certain number of people that are just in it to make a sale. They're not here to help you.
Right.
They're just here to make money.
Yeah.
We're here to help people. And we make money.
Maslow's hierarchy keeps coming up in conversations for the last couple of weeks, but I think that makes a difference. And so if I'm thinking about self-awareness and somebody comes at me and I know they need this sale or they think they need this sale because that's how it's coming across, right? Mm-hmm. It's very obvious when that's the case. They're in a different place than somebody who's created a mindset to know, yeah, things may be tight. Yeah, I may not know how long it will take to get results, but I have a plan and I'm taking the action. And so I've made myself a goal. And so with the right mindset and the wrong goal, we still can fall short. And so what are some things that you have found in both for social selling, for career change, for change in general, that tends to be missing in goal setting?
Yeah, people don't even make goals anymore. That I try to get people when I start my courses, like, okay, let's set your goals. In 90 days, where do you want to be? In 1 year, where do you want to be? And it's like, you ask them to solve the hardest problem in history.
I know.
It's like they get frozen.
Right. Well, and I'll do that from an example. Every time I do a webinar, every time I speak, there's one of two sets of questions I ask. And the one set that fits here is, how many of you have a business plan? And a lot of people will raise their hand. How many of you actually look at your business plan about twice a year? Over half the room will lower their hands. And then the next, so you have a little bit less than half the room left. And then I'll say, so how many of you use it regularly, like at least or more than once a month? And there might be 2 hands left up in the room.
Right.
So the thing is, we may have done a business plan and we think we're done, but people, goes back to that instant gratification and things are moving so fast. Well, without a plan, things will move fast and we'll feel like we're moving fast. And we end up being that hamster on the wheel that somehow isn't getting anywhere.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips for us about that? So somebody's like, yeah, I'm always really busy, but I'm not seeing this growth I want. Or yeah, I'm always really busy, but I haven't gotten the promotion I want. Or yeah, I'm always really busy and I still was, I was still laid off or forced out or whatever those things are that happen,
Mm-hmm. I've become a big believer in journaling and just writing, meditating. And I didn't really believe in that stuff before. Whatever you believe in meditating. I started doing it years ago, back when I was at Cellular One, because it was so stressful.
Mm-hmm.
And then journaling, and just things come to you at the right time. I don't know if you ever heard tapping,
Oh yeah, is it E-T? It's EFT, not ET.
Yeah. So my sister is an acupuncturist, and she's into this voodoo healing, we call it.
I love it.
And we just kind of like, okay, Connie, whatever you believe. So I came across this YouTube video, tapping for $50,000, where you do like 5-minute thing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't believe this. Let me just do this.
Yeah.
So I did this tapping for $50,000. Next day, I get a message saying, hey, I'm Perry Marshall's agent. You want to write 2 books with him? So I call him up and I say, okay, sure, we're going to co-author a book. It's, well, I can only pay you $25,000 per book. Is that okay?
I love it. So you're aligning action with intention and then getting out of the own way. And actually,
I was totally a non-believer in all this. Here's a $50,000 advance to write 2 books, and I've never written a book. And I'm just thinking, holy cow, what just happened?
Well, it's amazing where we can get the space, right? Which I love. Are you listening, everybody? So this can be traditional or non-traditional. It doesn't matter. Try something. That's what I'm taking away from TED, is the willingness to try something and be inquisitive about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You ever hear of Hal Elrod, The Morning Miracle?
Yes, I've got his book on my shelf.
Yeah.
Oh, you've got yours closer. Yeah. Uh-huh.
He was in a mastermind with me, and he got to get this book because he was near death. They didn't think he'd ever walk again from a car accident.
Yeah.
And he just started affirmations and positive thoughts and meditating. Then he runs ultra marathons now.
It's amazing. I tell you what.
That morning routine. And he just kind of, okay, this is what I want. If I need to make $10,000 this week, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make $10,000.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even have to put down the details sometimes. It's just put it out there.
And see what happens.
Or do the tapping.
I was going to say, make the space. So it might be tapping. It might be running. It might be meditating. It might be an extra long shower. Who knows?
Change your routine, whatever you're stuck in. If you're in a rut, do something different.
Change that. That's awesome. So in addition to The Morning Miracle, are there other books that this is my favorite part of any time I get to ask this. What are the books that you're reading? So favorite or not favorite, but the ones you find useful.
I'm a nerd. I read all the technical books and copywriting books.
Oh,
we go on vacation and I'm reading all these marketing books, and my wife's like, can't you read some fiction once in a while?
No, I only read fiction right before bed.
I listen to a lot of podcasts now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're
Yeah.
going to plug the show. You're already listening, either video or audio. Make sure, download the rest, right? Do what Ted does. Keep learning while you're doing other things.
You got to keep learning because everything's changing so fast. That was one of the good things about getting into coaching and personal development a long time ago.
Yeah.
Through all my roller coasters, I went back to the personal development, listened to Brian Tracy, listened to Zig Ziglar, just that positive talk, Tony Robbins, whoever your favorite is.
Exactly. And they're all there. I was trying to think, you know what one of my favorite books is? It's called Gerald Can't Dance.
Oh.
It's a kid's book.
Okay.
It's about 40 pages long, maybe a little more like, maybe it's 30 pages long. It's about this giraffe who everybody says he can't dance. And so he starts to believe it. And everybody else can do a dance. The lions and the warthogs and the zebras and the monkeys, they all have, and the alligators, right? The snakes, they all have this dance, but not giraffes. So poor Gerald can't dance. And so apparently he listens. He made space and he listens. And in that space of listening, and we can insert tapping for $50,000 or meditation, or we'll say Gary's get statements, or, the routine, the morning miracle plan, whatever that is in the middle of that, all of a sudden there was an inspiration, and he actually heard nature. And in the jungle, he was able to move with this thing he had never heard before. And then all of the other animals couldn't figure out what was happening because they didn't understand that Gerald was actually dancing because it looked so good. And Gerald actually could dance because he listened to himself. He made space for himself. So it's a fun little short children's book that is along the same lines then.
Yeah. No, it's get out of your element. Do something different. Have confidence in yourself.
Yes. Ooh, confidence is a biggie, isn't it?
So we love to go skiing. To get out there on the mountain and it's like fresh. Yeah. It drives me crazy when I see people plugged in and they're listening to music and blasting. It's like, just listen to nature. Yeah. We go hiking and people are with the boom boxes now. It's like, oh.
Oh yeah, you live where, by the way, we started seeing this in Boulder, where people put their boom boxes on their bike and, yes. Or they're in their backpack or on their shoulder as they're inline skating or whatever they're doing, right? That's happening here too. I know that's a very big thing.
Hiking in Yosemite, like 20 miles in, and like music, like what the hell?
Seems like an extra weight. Yeah, there's some evaluation there that could be done, huh? Yeah.
This is kind of social selling. People listening to this, if they can relate to what we're talking about,
yeah,
they know, like, and trust us. We have a bond.
Because we're able to just have a conversation.
Right. And maybe they like hiking, or maybe they like skiing, or maybe they like Boulder.
Right. Exactly.
Who knows?
Exactly. If you could do it again, all over again, would you do anything differently?
Ooh, great question. It's been such a wild ride for 30 years. I don't know if I could do anything different. I never really sat down and I did actually do a long-term plan.
Okay.
One of the times when I was in my burnout stage at Cellular One or somewhere, I was working for an investment bank as the IT guy. And I was traveling around the world. And I came home one day, I was just exhausted. So I worked 82 straight days or something. I got to have a change. I really need a change. And there was a letter from Stephen Covey's coaching inviting me to join a 6-month coaching program. I called him up that Monday morning. I signed up for the program. I quit my job. And my first assignment was write your future life out, like, your perfect day. And then you put it away. Mm-hmm. And I found that like 20 years later. And it was like almost exactly how I'd written it out.
No way. See, intention is a lot.
And I didn't think about that letter. I forgot about it. I was cleaning out my basement in the law office.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just the fact that you wrote it down, if you journal it, stuff happens.
And I think that's important. All senses, we can think it, we can see it. When we write it, we're engaging another sense. Mm-hmm. When we find it later, it's a different kind of sense, but still same thing there. All those senses. Yeah.
So when you're doing social media, it's good to engage with all the senses too. Try to put videos out there, even if you're uncomfortable. I'm really uncomfortable about doing videos with myself just talking.
Me too.
I don't know what it is. I can do this fine. I can
Yeah.
get on stage and speak in front of 500 people. But I can't sit here with the camera and record something and make any sense.
I know. Oh, believe me, I learned that early on, and I am much more animated with somebody in the room. So if I have to do a show on my own, I shouldn't say when I have to, when the shows that I do on my own, because I have Scott is always on camera, even though he may not show up in the live stream or in the audio at all. He's there, and I have his face because I need that. I thrive off of being able to have another energy to work with. Yeah. One way I'm clueless.
That Alex Mondosian gave me that tip. Says, put a picture of your family right here.
And that's a great tip. I never thought about that. I just was like, I need to see you, Scott.
Right.
Let's try that instead.
Yeah, it works.
Yeah, exactly.
But it builds a relationship with people when you post that stuff on social media, though.
Mm-hmm.
And your vulnerabilities. Sharing that is great.
Yeah. How long are your videos? I'm curious.
I do a lot of just screen capture videos showing little tips.
Yeah.
Like, here's something new on LinkedIn I found. I'll do like a 1 or 2 minute video.
Oh, that's cool. Okay. So
but I got to do more headshot videos for the book promotion and Instagram. And
and that's a whole other different ball game, huh?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's I'd like to just visually demonstrate.
Yeah. Uh-huh. I know. Believe me. I tell you what. So isn't this interesting? Because all of us, everybody that's listening, you, me, we have these things that we want to relate to that we might not even realize that are places of friction, right? They may not be hardship. They may not be actually problems, but there's friction. And it's easy to not look at the friction. It's easy to just kind of keep on going. And even when you get those little shocks, right? Like static, it's a time of year where there's a lot of static electricity. You get that shock and you just keep going. Mm-hmm. Well, when those mean something, which don't they always mean something?
Always.
So how do we, what would you suggest to us that we do to slow down a little, to find that space, to be able to go, oh, well, it means something. And
yeah, like when I'm coaching people, even if we're working on a LinkedIn profile, I'm coaching them through it.
Yeah.
In my coaching skills. And then there's like things they just want to skirt right past. Like, wait a minute, stop. Why are we trying to pass that one? What do you got to talk about that? And then, that's where you got to dig in, and that's where they have the breakthroughs.
Yeah.
So if you can sense that in yourself, I mean, we all know what we avoid.
Oh yeah. I even shared one.
Right. So we just have to be aware of that.
Yeah.
And that goes back to the intuition again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What's stopping my business? Why do I get to a point I can make 10,000 a month, but I can't go to 50,000? What's stopping me from putting myself in video on the internet when thousands of people are doing it every day? And they're like, I just don't even watch some of them because they're so bad, but I won't put my bad one out there.
Oh, all of mine go out.
Good.
Yeah. And in fact, even when I send in videos for other things that I am in a room by myself with just the camera, I never like them as much as if I would have just done it and sent it. I probably, that's actually the next thing. I was like, what if I just did that? What if I just did the same thing? I sat down, I thought about what must be said. What did this person want included in it? And then you send it off. And what if it was just that easy? Take and go, right? The take and go.
Right.
What makes it bold? To take control of your own career, of your own earning potential through social selling?
It's about, you do have to have the plan.
Yeah.
And just who you're looking for. I always work with when I look at their LinkedIn profile, say, who you're looking for, what's their biggest problem, how do you solve that problem? Your LinkedIn profile needs to reflect those 3 things. Because most people have their job title in there and they have the third person, Joe went to this school and he graduated with honors. And
don't tell anybody, but I know you fixed mine that way.
It's all about you. Make it about them. Exactly. Right. And help people and serve people, and it all comes back.
Yes, it does. Creating the path.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's pretty simple when you just keep going back. Listen to those old school tapes, the Brian Tracy's. So I do a lot of copywriting courses. The best copywriting books are written in the early 1900s. And they're still relevant today because human psychology is still the same. We want to buy stuff and we have these desires that we don't want to be sold to. That's never going to change. Well, maybe when they plant chips in us and stuff.
Oh, you're going to have to come back and we can actually have a whole conversation about that.
Yes. Well, but right now,
yeah,
our brains are going to work the same way.
That's right.
We still have the same desires, the same needs. We need people to be around us. Well, not everybody, but.
Well, even the hermits need people once in a while.
Right.
Right.
No, it's true.
It is true.
And to social selling, don't call it selling. Talk about relationships and build friendships. Even if they're around the world. I have so many clients around the world. I've never met them. I'll never meet them in person. But oh, I know you. I've seen you on the internet. Like my nephew said, your dad's famous.
You heard it here. Ted, Prodromou, and I talk about being social, which results in selling through friendships and relationships, knowing what our goals are and how we move forward. You can find all the program notes at voiceofboldbusiness.com/P189. That's voiceofboldbusiness.com/P for program 189. You can also search Direct Your Career During Change. So now it's your turn. Keep this conversation going. Tell us a story. What's something that you related to in this? What's something that our conversation encouraged you to think about that maybe you hadn't thought about in a while or yet? Rate this program on iTunes, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. Whatever platform you're listening from, give us feedback. Keep this conversation going because it's what you're learning from Ted and what you're learning from the conversation I'm having with Ted that you can now take our experiences that we've created here and apply them practically to the situations that you're facing yourself. And our question to you, what can you do to adapt and direct your career right now, and especially during change?
The voice of Bold Business Radio gives you insights about how to achieve your company's growth strategy. When you aren't seeing the growth results you want, it's time to get an outside perspective. To discuss your specific situation around growth strategy, work with us. Visit voiceofboldbusiness.com and click Find Out More. Special thanks to the Scott Treatment for technical production. Thank you for joining us.